So much stuff I want to talk about today, but the main thing, if you're new to riding bikes and your butt hurts and you're wanting to run out and get a new saddle or covered in a gel sleeve or something like that, don't do that just yet. Let's talk about it. Believe it or not, it's really about the last thing you want to do if your butt hurts when you're starting to ride bikes. The last thing you want to do is to get a big old pillowy, puffy, super soft, super wide saddle. I know it's counterintuitive. Just don't do that. There's some basic steps you want to address first, and then over time you'll know if you really do need to replace the saddle, but I guarantee you it's never going to be with that big cushy saddle. So we're talking saddles today because I regularly see that as like one of the top issues with newer riders. It's like, ow, my butt, ow, my chain. And I get it, trust me, I was dealing with that on this bike, and that's the second reason why I wanted to go ahead and do this video, because I am having to go through the steps with this one. First off, let me explain why when you first start riding you have saddle pain, and almost everyone's going to. But here's the number one reason your butt hurts when you start riding bicycles. It's because you just started riding bicycles. Your butt is not conditioned for that yet. It's like calluses on the fingertips for guitar players. Most people don't get actual calluses on the butt. Some do. It's not just a matter of getting used to it and toughing it out. You are conditioning the skin and the muscles and the bones, the sit bones. That's the important part. It takes a while for them to get used to everything. But there's some steps you can do to speed that up. But the main thing is what not to do. As a reminder, the first thing you don't want to do is just immediately replace the saddle. Don't do that yet. You may still end up having to do that, but there's no way for you to know that yet. The second thing for you to not do is ride your bike too much. Too many times in a row, too many miles for the first ride or two or whatever. Too much time, and it's more time than miles. Get used to measuring your cycling in time ridden, literally saddle time, as opposed to how far you've gone distance-wise. So what is the right amount of time? And this doesn't have to do anything with your fitness. You can be a marathon runner and it's still going to apply, or you can just be getting off the couch for the first time in 10 years and this is going to apply. Both cases, your butt is not conditioned for saddle time. We're on the state steel all-road bicycle today, and that's part of why I'm adjusting my saddle stuff too. It's a newer bike for me, and anytime you get a new bike, even when your butt's conditioned, you got to get the fit dialed in. The reality is almost anybody can ride even the worst fit bike with the worst saddle and the worst fitness. You can do that for 30 minutes or less, and unless something's really, really out of whack, you shouldn't have too much bum pain. A more realistic scenario is if you're still feeling pain with 30 minutes or less of riding, it's probably an abrasion issue. That generally has more to do with what you're wearing than the saddle. So here's the main thing. Stay away from seams. You don't want underwear with seams. Those are abrasion points. If you have some nice smooth drawers that you're wearing under athletic shorts or something like that, that's an improvement. But then the athletic shorts themselves are likely to have seams. And it can be better, but you might still end up with some irritation, particularly when you're first starting out and you haven't started to condition the butt. The simple solution is decent bike shorts. If you have no seam stuff of your own to get started, you don't have to go out and buy a set of bids just yet. I mean, most people that seriously get into cycling find that cycling shorts with the chamois most of the time for most riders is the preferred way to go, but everybody's different. Step one, keep your rides 30 minutes or less when you first start out, and if you're still having irritation issues, make sure you minimize the seams as much as possible. I wouldn't recommend riding naked though. So let's take that 30 minutes or less riding approach and turn that into butt conditioning. So if you're just starting out, the rule of threes works pretty well in general for a lot of cycling stuff. 3 rides a week, 30 minutes or less for 3 weeks. And that'll be a good start. Now, what you can do during that 3 weeks, like if the first week you ride your 3 rides for 30 minutes or less and there's no pain, you can try upping the ride duration or throwing another ride in the mix. Starting out 30 minutes a ride for 3 rides the first week. If it's no pain, turn it into 4 rides the second week, and then if there's still no pain, maybe up some of the rides up to 45 minutes on the 3rd week. Kind of that approach. And if you're not running into butt pain, that's a really good sign, and you're probably close to having your butt fairly well conditioned at that point for rides of 60 minutes or less. None of those steps apply to you, or you've done all those things, or you're having saddle pain, for lack of a better term, from the get-go for rides 30 minutes or less. This is where it starts to get complicated, I'll be honest with you, and the newer rider's gonna have a difficult time sorting this out without help. And don't assume you know the right person to help off the top of your head. If it's not a butt conditioning issue, if it's not an abrasive garment against the skin issue, at that point a bike fit issue. But bike fit covers so many different variables. Everything from, do you have the right size bike for you to begin with, to, and this is where it gets super complicated, and it's what I'm in the middle of with this newer ride for me. Bike fit is literally millimeters of variation of everything from saddle height to the nose of the saddle tilt, the fore and aft positioning, forward and backwards of the saddle, and that's just fit at the saddle. Then you start getting into the fit of the handlebar, the brake levers, everything, all these pieces, they're just millimeters of difference can make a big change. But we're back to, realistically, almost anything is tolerable without tremendous pain for 30 minutes or less. This really isn't it's gonna be different things than butt pain though. For example, if your saddle is too low, it may create knee pain right across the top of the kneecap. Even for very short rides, or just start pedaling a little bit and you might have knee pain. So that's, things like that are quickly indicative of, hey, we've got a basic fit issue that needs to be adjusted and accounted for. But usually those don't appear in the butt. Usually the fit issues that lead to a sore butt develop over longer rides. Realistically, anybody can ride almost the most ill-fitting bike in the world for 30 minutes or less. And if it's just basically adjusted towards where you need to be, you shouldn't have major issues. A little bit of butt conditioning and maybe some fine tuning on saddle tilt and things like that. Most people can probably ride for 60 minutes or less and not have to resort to expertise. The reality is, once you start riding regularly, 90 minutes or more per ride, just minor variations in all of these positions of the body on the bike can have huge repercussions. But if you're a new rider and exploring butt issues, you don't have to worry about that yet. So let's go back to, you've ridden your 3 weeks. Maybe you were doing pretty good for 30-minute rides. Started noticing some discomfort if you got up to 45 minutes or so. And now you're trying hour-long rides, and you definitely have tenderness issues after an hour. It can still be a conditioning thing at that point. Realistically, 6 to 12 weeks to get your butt fully conditioned if you're riding regularly. But also realistically, 3 weeks of regular riding will get most people close to there if they're slowly building their saddle time and distance and number of times per week sort of thing. If you jump out there and all of a sudden do a 4-hour ride and you haven't done a 4-hour ride before, your butt's not conditioned for that yet. If you do two or 3 hour rides in a day when you haven't ridden like that prior, your butt's going to have issues. But if you're building your saddle time up and your number of rides per week up and things were pretty okay, but they're just regularly getting a little more aggravated, that could be, yes, your fit's off. But it could also be that you're not on the right saddle for your butt. And that's where the expertise starts coming in. Because there's a gazillion different saddles out there. And the most important part is actually the right size of the saddle. I bet you didn't realize there were saddle sizes, did you? It does align with fit. They're kind of two sides of the same coin. Basically, when you're riding a bike, and this is the reason that you don't want a big old pillow of a saddle or a gel cover or whatever else. The saddle itself isn't really what's supporting your body. It's your sit bones. So your sit bones need to properly distribute the weight across the saddle. And that means the saddle itself has to be wide enough to match up with your sit bone position to properly support the weight. So basically the positioning of the saddle, which is the fit, so that's going to be forward and backwards on the seat post, the proper height, the proper tilt. Those are going to be important for your sit bones to support your weight properly on the saddle. So let me give you just some quick and dirty snapshots on how to approximate those, and this is just approximate. Saddle height is generally the easiest to approximate. Actually, tilt is the easiest to nail down, but proper saddle height is the most important to approximate and still fairly simple. To determine how high or low the saddle goes for that bike for your needs, you're going to need the shoes that you plan to ride in. Ideally, the clothes you plan to ride in, but definitely the shoes you plan to ride in. Essentially what you want, either pedal all the way down towards the bottom of the stroke, and this is while you're on the bike, not standing off to the side. When you're riding the bike, basically when the pedal's all the way down and then your foot is over the center of the pedal spindle, that's where you want your foot positioned. You want the pedal horizontal at the bottom of the stroke. At that point, you don't want there to be a knee bend or a straight knee, just a slight bend in it. Just a slight bend. And I know, slight's subjective, and that's not exact. That's going to get you in the ballpark there. All right, next one is saddle tilt, nose tilt of the saddle. You want your saddle horizontal. Different riders, different bikes, different types of riding styles and things like that. Some people may prefer just a slight nose up, some a slight nose down. But if you start out with a level and horizontal saddle position, you're going to be pretty close. You're going to approximate it there. And in that one, just put a level on the saddle and adjust it. So now we've got saddle height, we've got tilt. For most people, that's gonna get you 90% or more of the way there. The next one is fore and aft position of the saddle itself, forwards and backwards. This one's really tougher to define because it ties more so into the handlebar and your distance from the handlebar, and there's adjustments, and you start getting into a realm of permutations upon permutations that can complicate things. We're really not going to go into fore and aft positioning a whole lot. Actually, we're just gonna stop there. We're just going to address that generality of what fore aft positioning is. Like I said, if you get the other two dialed in, you're 90% of the way there. If at that point fore and aft becomes super critical for you, that's really when you need to start working an expert into the mix one way or another. One of the reasons I wanted to cover this subject is this being a newer bike, I'm dealing with some of the saddle issues and fit issues on this one. This bike was just absolutely tearing up my ass once I got into towards 90 minutes of riding on this. But I knew from the get-go that the most likely reason for it was because of the saddle itself. It was a very cushy saddle, and I get why State supplied that saddle with this bike. It's not the right saddle for most people, but it's the right saddle that most newer riders, which is who this bike is catered towards, think is a better saddle for their needs. Lots of cushion. Kind of look cool, but lots of cushion. What happens is when you have a saddle with a lot of cushion, the cushion itself bunches up in typically the worst spots And the longer you ride, it compresses things, and it just, everything gets out of whack, and you start getting bumps and support in spots that are less than ideal. That is the simplistic solution. Oh, my butt's sore, I want a softer saddle. It's actually a firmer saddle is typically the preferred way to go. And some of us take firm to the extreme. I am one of those that just rides a leather saddle with no cushion, and it just gives me tons of support, and it's the most comfortable thing for me. I'm not saying that's what you should do, but make no mistake, firmer is better, not cushier.